Good morning, everyone. This is Spirit Matters, your daily Bhakti Center podcast, where we talk about spiritual subject matters and learn how to bring them into our practical, daily lived lives. And we are reading ancient spiritual texts, Bhagavad Gita, and we are going verse by verse. And that's what we're doing. We're here with our live studio audience and with Achyuta Gopi. How are you doing this morning, Achyuta?
Doing well. Today's going to be a good day.
I am also doing well. I was actually thinking of you, Chuta, yesterday because I was seeing something unfortunate that I don't want to get too much into this, but it was just like about someone like losing faith.
Oh,
And yeah, and I was just thinking about how much faith you have. And it was making me feel very like sheltered by your faith, actually. I was just like, thank God for Chuta because she just like keeps us going, you know?
thank you. So funny. I was just talking to my sister. Yes. I mean, well, when am I not? But I was talking to my sister yesterday, and it was also kind of along those lines.
Mm,
And how when we put so much stock in like God solving our issues in exactly the way we think that God should solve our issues, not only do we like cut ourselves off from blessings that we just can't see because we are limited spirit souls, but then it starts to like chip away at
mm,
that trust that we have in our friend that just
mm-hmm,
starts to make us say and do
mm-hmm.
things we wouldn't, that are so outside of our character.
Yeah, and not to get into this can of worms because it's a whole topic and we've talked about it so much through this podcast, but and when people uh conflate God, Krishna with like the institution and people and devotees, because it's like people are fallible, they make mistakes. So if my faith is based on other people and an institution, it's like you're almost kind of bound to be disappointed a little bit because we live in the material world. It's Kali Yuga. And actually, it does connect with the verses we're about to read because it starts to get into like, well, what is this material world and what is spiritual? So we are reading Bhagavad Gita chapter 2, verses 16 and 17, I believe, today. You want to take us away, Achyuta?
Let's do it, and then we'll get more into it.
Yeah.
So, starting with verse 16. Those who are seers of the truth, Krishna is saying, have concluded that of the non existent, or the material body, there is no endurance, and of the eternal, the soul, there is no change. This they have concluded by studying the nature of both. That which pervades the entire body, you should know to be indestructible. No one is able to destroy that imperishable soul.
Mm. Super beautiful, right? It's kind of just like we've said it a lot in this podcast, how the Vedas are defining um what is real. And what is real is that which is eternal, that which doesn't perish. And what is not real is that which is not eternal and that which does perish. And it's such a mind bending situation because it's like I was like trying to think of another word, a mind bending
You're like,
situation.
what was it
Like
before it was? I know it
because,
was something.
because this is telling us very clearly that the material body does not endure, and therefore it's not real. It's material, and it's so crazy because we live in a world where we struggle so hard with that truth. We struggle so hard with accepting that truth. You were speaking yesterday about this around, we were getting into topics about death and people just being so like absorbed in their material body and not seeing it as a rite of passage into the next life and hopefully going to that spiritual abode. And it's like we struggle so much with that truth, which we know logically. It's like, in our minds, we're like, yeah, the body is going to change and I'm going to get old. But it's almost like on a heart level or on an emotional level, we really struggle to accept it.
Yeah, we're still actively rebelling against the idea. Well, actually, not even the idea, the absolute truth that all of these things are going to change. That all of the that it's the same thing. We look in the mirror each day and we deny any aging process that will occur, unless it is to our immediate benefit that we can see. And what I love here is that, Krishna is talking about the people who have studied the nature of both.
Mm,
And this material world is heavy about material science and studying that, but nobody is pushing us to study spiritual science,
mm,
except for Srila Prabhupada
mm,
and other spiritual acharyas and teachers. But they come to push us into this realm of studying spiritual science.
mm,
And then, in return, we discount them and, go on witch hunts after them,
mm,
and on occasion crucify them. And then
mhm,
we completely throw out everything that they've said,
mhm.
because that's how we reciprocate as people.
I love how you gave that qualifier, unless it's to
Yeah,
our gain in some way.
yeah, unless it's to our immediate satisfaction,
Yeah.
we tend to like throw out everything.
Yeah. And it's interesting because now we're living in a time where it's like, because, well, there's so many reasons, right? Technology and Google and whatever, right? Like information is just so readily available that it's very easy to pick what you want and leave what you don't want.
Mm,
And that's really interesting to me because it's like you're just skimming the top of the milk. You're not really like getting into the whole depth of it, and you're not going to be able to go that deep. I was having a conversation with a old high school friend that I saw over the weekend. It was really interesting because he's kind of like a yogi and like teaches yoga and like whatever. And
isn't that crazy when that happens? It's like people that would, like, you were just going on regular, you know American high school paths in New York, and then all of a sudden all of these, like,
we did our yoga teacher training together too, which was kind of crazy.
no way.
But it was really interesting because he was kind of asking this question whenever, I don't know how it is with you, but whenever like old friends like see me, they like want to talk about yoga and philosophy. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. But it was interesting because he was asking like kind of in a contestive mood, like, well, why can't I worship all the demigods? Like, why are you all so focused on Krishna? Like, why
Mm,
can't I chant to Hanuman, and why can't I chant to Shiva, and why can't I chant to Lakshmi? And I was like, no one's saying that you can't. Like, you can do whatever you want. But I gave him a very simple answer. I was just like, at the end of the day, all of these are we see them as great devotees of Krishna, and if you want to chant to them, go for it. I said, we're Krishna bhaktas and we're trying to deepen our relationship with Krishna, and therefore we're chanting to Krishna. And I just gave it to him in a very simple way of like, if you're loving everyone and chanting to everybody and trying to do it all, it's just going to be a more difficult process to go really, really deep with one of them. Like, it's that simple. And so this is my path, and I'm going super deep with Krishna, and that's what I want to do. But doesn't necessarily mean that other paths are wrong. And I think that's really interesting because when we're getting into kind of like spiritual marketplace contemporary times of just like, I pick and choose what I want, it's like, okay, but is picking and choosing what you want helping you get deeper into the truth, the very simple truth of this material body is going to end and there's a eternal spiritual reality? Like, is it helping you get there? And if it is, good for you. And if it's not, you got a problem.
yeah, I absolutely agree. And looking at this idea of like spiritual marketplace, it's always been there, but many people have developed a relationship with a certain spiritual personality, usually because of some relationship that's occurred. If you look back generations and families of people who have been worshiping Lord Shiva, or say Lord Ganesh, whose birthday is today, by
Oh,
the way, it's Ganesh Chaturthi. Happy
yeah.
birthday! So if we look at so many people who have chosen them as their family deity, if you go way back, it's usually because that deity has done something special for that family, or that it meant something special to this descendant, this person, and so it gets passed down. And I think that the problem comes in when it's like, well, yeah, like why can't I? It's like, well, there's nothing saying you can't actually. And then there's everything saying you should give all respect to all of these spiritual personalities. But why did you choose to worship everyone? Usually the motivations come because it's like, oh, well, because Hanuman gives me this, and Lord Ganesh gives me this, and Lord Shiva gives me this, and Parvati Devi gives me this, and then Lakshmi Devi gives me this. And it's like, whoa,
Yeah.
this was not what service was supposed to be about. Like, the actual path of bhakti or devotion, it does not have to just be around Krishna,
Mm.
but it shouldn't just be around us.
Mm.
Like, that's the thing. We have to take ourselves out of the center. And as we talk about understanding the nature of both, it gets into understanding the depth of relationships,
Mhm.
spiritual, material, both. We have to understand the depth of our relationships and how deeply we are entering into these relationships. It's like if you lived your whole life thinking that 2 plus 2 is the only way to get to 4, and then you get older, and then you realize that there's an easier one. You can do 2 times 2, you can do a 3 plus 1, you could do so many different variations.
Mhm.
And then you kind of realize that it's not that you were wrong for believing that 2 plus 2 could equal 4, sure. But Ranath Maharaj gives that example and he says, but now you've just completely understood the nature of 4
Mm.
and that there are more ways. And so I
Mhm.
feel like it's the same way with spirituality. When we are doing things, especially in the very beginning, a lot of the time we don't understand anything behind what we're doing or why. We
Mhm.
just know we've got a set of rules and somebody told us and they seem like a really spiritual personality, so we should do these things. But at a certain point it has to develop deeper, because like you said, then our faith gets shaky. What happens if the math teacher just isn't a great math teacher?
Mhm.
What happens if the math teacher can teach math really well? So, i.e., what if our spiritual teachers are good at teaching us spirituality, but
Mhm.
not great marriage counselors? But then you depend on them to also be your marriage counselors. And then your marriage blows up in your face. And then you're like, well, my faith is gone because that person couldn't fulfill my needs. But
Mm.
we're asking the wrong things from the wrong people. We've got to understand the nature of this world and the nature of the people within this world. And this is exactly what Krishna is telling Arjuna. Is like, look, let me tell you something. They understood both. They studied both. Like
Mhm.
Krishna is saying right now, like active study. Look into it. Really read back. Search for some answers. But the word submissive, people take that with some sort of modern connotation that immediately means slave, which I'm like, those two were not mutually exclusive. But with an attitude of actually trying. There's a
Mhm.
difference when we enter into something and we want to understand. There's even a difference when we enter into a conversation like, okay, help me understand what's happening with you as a person, Kishore. Like if I called you up and I'm like, oh my God, you do this and you do this and you do this, and I that doesn't really jive with me. Versus,
Mhm.
hey, you okay? Help me understand. Like what am I missing? What's happening?
Mhm.
And so when we enter into it with that mindset, and Krishna is urging Arjuna, he's like, sure, study the nature of both.
Mhm.
I mean, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. I can tell you everything right now, but study the nature of both and really look deeply into it. Find a way to really delve into these spiritual relationships and make a spiritual relationship.
Mm. It really is all about relationships, like you're saying, because from an material standpoint, relationships tend to move towards an exploitative uh,
Yeah.
aspect, right? It's like, what can I get from you? What am I going to get out of you? Am I going to get happiness out of you? Am I going to get finances out of you? Am I going to get, position and whatever, and whatever it is? And I love that you brought this because it was a point that I was wanting to make and I forgot. about, yeah, most of these people maybe have chanted to these demigods because they gave them something. And even if you look at kind of like modern day yoga culture where they're not going deep into these demigods or deep into these mantras, usually the rhetoric is, we chant this mantra to this demigod because he gives us a feeling of whatever, you know, empowerment, or destroying our this or doing that, or like brings us wealth and happiness. And that's literally the language. And it's like, okay, well, that's not devotion, you know, because I'm supposed to be really, really establishing a relationship with you, with higher power, that's not based on transaction. And I really love here in the purport of verse 16, Srila Prabhupada says something, it's in the second paragraph. And I really love what he says here because I feel like it encapsulates a lot of what we're talking about. He says, this is the beginning of the instruction by the Lord to the living entities who are bewildered by the influence of ignorance. So like, this is the start. This is it. Removal of ignorance involves the re-establishment of the eternal relationship between the worshiper and the worshipable, and the consequent understanding of the difference between the part and parcel living entities and the supreme personality of Godhead.
Love it
One,
when things happen like this.
huh?
I said, I love it when things happen like this.
I know, right? Isn't it perfect? And then like the last thing he says is, one can understand the nature of the supreme by thorough study of oneself. The difference between oneself and the supreme being understood as the relationship between the part and the whole. And it's such a beautiful understanding that Srila Prabhupada is giving us, because it's so simple. It's like the beginning of getting ourselves out of ignorance is to understand our position, who we are as conditioned souls in these bodies in this material world, and the position of the Supreme, of Krishna, and how that relationship works. If I don't understand how that relationship works, then actually I run the danger of staying in ignorance, because I might lean towards exploitative kind of just like, Krishna, give me this, Krishna, give me that, Krishna, why didn't you fix my marriage? You know, now I don't like you anymore. And so Srila Prabhupada is like super clear. It's like, no, this is the beginning of you coming out of ignorance, understanding this relationship.
And it's like when we hear about people going into relationships, they're like, oh, you should be whole before you go into a relationship. And I think that that's a little bit skewed. Maybe not whole, but you should at least have a real deep understanding of who you are. You have to have an understanding of yourself before you can dive into this other relationship. And this is exactly what Krishna is saying. Understand yourself, get some understanding of yourself. Srila Prabhupada is saying the people who have studied themselves start to understand, wait a second, I'm one small part, and I've got to figure out the rest of this recipe that is making up my life. And there's so many other parts in there, and so much of it is dependent on spiritual grace. And that grace can come from these spiritual entities by and far. Like by and large, they've got what we want, which is this unflinching devotion. They've got the road mapped out toward devotion. Um, and so one of our friends is saying that they still like to recognize and wish well. Actually, I'm wearing a Lord Ganesh t-shirt right now. But yeah, because not because, oh, maybe Lord Ganesh will give me a new car, and it's Ganesh Chaturthi, and he wealth follows him wherever he goes, and all of the, not because of that, but because this is a super personality who has interacted with my supreme friend. It's like if you saw the entourage of your favorite whoever, celebrity, whatever, you'd be like, no problem, you do whatever it took to get close to your the person you were fangirling over. And so that's kind of how I feel about it with Krishna. These super entities have had contact with my Krishna, and I need to figure out how to get myself in a better position to also come that close.
Absolutely. I love how you put it. How can I put myself in a better position to come that close? It's so nice, because it's like, I've been really thinking of how simple bhakti is. It's also complicated, but it's also very simple. And this I was speaking about this when I was giving Bhagavatam class yesterday. I like to speak about this concept a lot of the root problem of existence just being that we're turned away from Krishna, the Vedas say. And the simple solution is I turn towards Krishna. It's like that
Yeah,
simple.
yeah,
It's like I'm turned away,
yeah.
thinking that I have to deal with everything on my own, thinking the weight of the world is on my shoulders and like no one loves me and like blah 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 blah. Krishna's been there. You always say this so nicely. It's like Krishna's been there, like I've been here for eternity. I love you. You're my friend. I'm your best friend. Turn towards me. I'm like, no, I don't want to. And then
Because
finally,
no one loves me.
because no one loves me and I don't believe you. And then finally one day it's like, well, maybe I do believe you. And then it's like, okay, oh wow, you've been there the whole time. And like it's like that, it's that simple. Like bhakti is that simple. Of course, there's like complexities and stuff because I think everyone deals with their own internal landscapes, because that feeling of being hurt, it's like, think about how many lives we've been through. Who knows, like I don't know, I've never gotten a past life regression because it kind of scares me. But it's like, who knows, like immeasurable amounts, right? And imagine all of that hurt that we feel now of like no one loves me and like I'm so alone and like blah blah blah. It's like that times a lot because of all these lives. So that moment when we start to come out of ignorance, like Srila Prabhupada is saying, that moment that we start to really understand my relationship with Krishna, that actually Krishna has been there this whole time, it's such a a merciful moment, and it's such a kind of like a one in a million moment. It's like, wow,
Mm,
like I'm coming out of this dark place and I'm turning towards something so beautiful. And then the sustainability of that is really interesting.
mm.
I think that's where it starts to get complex, because you continue to read these verses. This next verse is talking about how the soul is indestructible and no one is able to destroy that imperishable soul. And it's like, that sounds beautiful. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is talking about how in the Vedas they define the soul and the measurements of the soul and the locations of this, like mind-blowing. But there are days on a practical level where you wake up and your soul feels covered. It feels dark. It feels like I don't want to do this anymore. Like I can't turn towards you, Krishna, like this. And therefore, bhakti yoga is a beautiful science that's been laid out in so many steps. Bhakti yoga, like steps, like step 1 to 9, step 1 to 64, step to,
Yeah,
just pop, pop,
yeah.
pop, pop. And it's like, wow, it's like I have this beautiful system of yoga that has been laid out for me, and I can choose to walk it even though I might slip and fall. And here it is, Krishna's making it even easier for me. And it's so like kind of heartwarming in a sense. It's like, wow, Krishna has really like made this like a step-by-step process for me to come to him and move out of that fear and actually believe him.
I like to think that Beyonce makes songs about Bhagavad Gita. I don't know it yet. I mean, she essentially said the same thing a lot of times. Like the
There
whole chorus was, you okay? You won't break my
you
soul.
won't, you won't break it. You won't
Can't
break
break
it. I'm just imagining Beyonce and Jay-Z like,
it.
never
Jay,
was there a
please
time,
think about this.
never was there a time when you did not exist, nor these came.
It's a good song.
Um,
Yeah. So I mean, there were so many interesting things that you said in there, even down to the way that we look at our relationship with Krishna. And like you said, we are convinced so much that nobody loves us,
mm,
that we're almost even afraid to look at the alternative.
mm,
And it's kind of like, well, do you want to be happy? Because I know we say that we do, but is it that we've become so used to battling this situation and feeling less than
mm,
that has become the normal, and just cessation of that is enough?
mm,
I was talking to my sister, and I was saying I was having I was having a rough day. I ran into a reel. Literally, I was just minding my business, and I wasn't even scrolling that long, but there was this reel, and there was this woman, and she was like crying so much. and she was saying, she's like, I've never experienced this level of homophobia ever in my life. And I was like, whoa, what happened? Because I had like the subtitles on. I was like, what happened to this lady? So in essence, she went to the dry cleaners. She went to drop off a dress. The dry cleaner was used to, I guess, seeing her with a boyfriend, and the dry cleaner said, "What happened to your boyfriend?" She said, "Oh, we broke up." The dry cleaner said, "Oh, what happened?" And then she said, "Well, I realized that I'm not attracted to men, and that's why we broke up." And the dry cleaner said, "Well, God doesn't make mistakes." And then the lady said, "Well, I thought she was trying to encourage me." And then the dry cleaning lady said, you know, God didn't make you this way, and you're living a life of sin, and you are breaking all the commandments. And then that sent this lady, that was enough to send this lady into the tailspin of the whole thing. And she was like, I've never experienced this level of homophobia. And part of me being the minority that I wake up as every day, was like, that's it? That was all? Number one, why does this dry cleaning lady know your business?
Exactly. I was right about to say, it's like, why are you sharing
Why are you
with your
engaging the dry cleaning lady? Drop off your dress. Like, what happened to your boyfriend? I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't know who you're talking about. He was an alien. Like, I don't know. Like, whatever. Like, you don't have to tell people your life story. You don't have to give them that access to you. And then, um, so then she was like, "Oh, I can't believe this, and it's ridiculous that I have to deal with this in today's America." And I was like, you're in a different America, lady. It's a very different America for you. This is not how America goes for a lot of minorities. But my sister was saying, she was like, well, she's not used to being in a minority. She's a very pretty woman, fair woman, like never had, like, you could see she had had all the plastic surgery, she had had all the things, and she was fine, um or so she thought. And so this idea of, and she was saying, she's like, you have to understand that as a black woman, you've had to deal with so much on a daily basis, that now even just the slightest cessation of that, it's like, that's it, like, just another day. And so I feel like when we are souls dealing with heaped on lifetimes of struggle, things that we are struggling against, it gets so difficult for us to turn towards spirituality. And it looks like at the slightest provocation, we crumble, and we crumple up. Like, our souls are like, okay, that's it, I'm going to turn toward Krishna, here we go. And then the universe is like, this universe is way bigger than you've given us credit for, and we're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I have to deal with this is an obstacle, like I have to deal with obstacles. And meanwhile, even God, who every single time God brings themselves to this material plane, deals with obstacles, is like, that's it, that's all it took for you to crumble. That's it. You want to go through this process and you're already crumbling, like, what? And yet, and still, our supreme person doesn't ever hold it against us. They're like, all right, well, I'll walk you through it. But as you were saying, this moving from darkness into the light, and from the ignorance into the knowledge, which always makes me think of like asatoma, like, right? See, so it's a rebirth, and birth is messy. Birth is really painful. Birth is kind of traumatic. Um, and so it's kind of a good thing that it happens to newborns who are very, very resilient and don't remember, because it's traumatic. And if we had to deal with that as adults, I don't think we'd make it. Like, we are not very resilient as human adults.
Yeah, reading that part of the Srimad Bhagavatam where it talks, I think it's like the end of the third canto where it talks about like the fetus in the womb. I'm just like,
Oh my god, it's actually really sad.
I'm like, this is traumatizing. I was gonna say
Super
though,
sad. Do not
super sad.
recommend to read while you're pregnant. My mom
No,
told me. My
don't.
mom was like, "You should read it while you're pregnant." And so I took her advice, because she's my mom. And I read it while I was pregnant, and every single hormone, I was crying for days. And then I was like, "Mom, why would you do this? I know I read it before, but why would you tell me to read this now? This is not a happy experience." She's like, "But it's true." I was like, "I'm not reading this." And then I went and I opened Krishna book and read happy little stories about Krishna as a baby. And
Yes,
those made me feel better.
those are better. Yeah.
It is so sad.
I was gonna say, while you were telling that story about homophobia, I was laughing so much because me and Jai Jagannath, we joke about this stuff all the time. We're like, that person just cut us in line. Homophobia. That person gave me a wrong look. Let's just call it. Let's just homophobe. Like we're like joking like this, and it's like, it's really interesting because yeah, people are so stuck on that material platform, and Srila Prabhupada talks about this in the purport. So I'm going to read one more purport, and I know we've gone over a little bit, but then we'll end. This is in the next verse, and he says, this is right at the beginning of the purport. He said, this verse more clearly explains the real nature of the soul, which is spread all over the body. Anyone can understand what is spread all over the body. It is consciousness.
Hmm.
Everyone is conscious of the pains and pleasures of the body in part or as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
This spreading of consciousness is limited within one's own body. The pains and pleasure of one body are unknown to another. Therefore, each and every body is the embodiment of an individual soul, and the symptom of the soul's presence is perceived as individual consciousness. And then he goes on and on to speak about the relationship of that soul with the Supreme. And it's just interesting because when the soul is spread over this body, when it's covered by the body, it's like we're experiencing this pain and the suffering and the phobias and the whatever as like, this is only happening to me. And I can't believe this is happening to me on this day. And no one understands what happened here at the laundromat and with the dry cleaning lady. And it's like, no, actually, everyone is going through their own pain. Everyone is going through their own suffering. And to get caught in that suffering is what goes on to say in this purport is the trap, because it keeps us at that level of the soul being covered by the body, as opposed to if I'm removing ignorance, it's me understanding the eternal relationship of the soul of the worshiper with the worshipable, the soul with the highest soul, the highest person. And it's like, that's what's going to get us out of there, because it's like, I agree with you. It's like, first of all, why does that laundry lady know, my business?
I need to know your
That's
business.
number one.
She just needs
And
to dry
number two,
clean the dress.
yeah, it's like, and number two, it's like, if my relationship with Krishna is so deep, that stuff should be kind of inconsequential. It's just like, yeah, whatever, she's a homophobe. Okay, whatever. There's a lot of homophobes out there, so maybe don't be spilling your business all around town, because it's the unfortunate material reality. There's a lot of racists out there. There's a lot of all these things out there. I remember my brother is like, my oldest brother is he's like the fairest out of all of us. We're pretty like light-skinned Latinos, but he's like the most fair. But he married an Ecuadorian girl that is not fair, and their kids are not fair. And I remember him telling me a story of like how he went somewhere. I can't remember the place he went to, but it was somewhere like America, not New York. That's how I think of America, not New York. And he was telling me how he experienced like straight up like in your face racism, just like, no, we will not pump your gas. No.
Yeah, no.
And I was just like, and I never experienced this because I don't like leaving New York City, and for the most part, and I was just like, I'm never going to that state. Like, I just don't want to go there. Like, why would I put myself in that position? Like, I just don't want to deal with it. So I'll just stay here in New York, where things are more chill, not perfectly chill, but more chill. And it's more of that. I feel like if I have that preliminary understanding that this is the material world, not a fair place, and there is going to be all these phobias and racisms and hates and this and whatever, okay, that's my starting ground. But actually, I'm not super interested in that. What I'm interested in is my relationship with Krishna, my relationship with God, my relationship with higher power, because as Srila Prabhupada is saying, that's the beginning of moving me out of ignorance. But we've gone on and on and on, because this is such a good topic. It's such a good, and we could just keep on going. We could just keep on going, but not, because we're 10 minutes over. So we're going to hand it over to Kimberly to give us our takeaways. And if anyone else has any takeaways, please write them in the chat.
Thank you. So today we're taking away to understand our position and take ourselves out of the center. That 2 plus 2 isn't the only way to get to 4. And to dive deep into a relationship that's not only based on transactions.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much, Kimberly, for getting the essence of what we were talking about today. Achyuta, what are you walking away with today?
I'm walking away with something that Srila Prabhupada said in that last section of the purport, which is one's pains and pleasures cannot be understood by another, which is the crux of when you see like foundations sprout up for a certain illness or whatever it is. Or now we are doing like homophobia awareness and all these things. And usually it's because somebody close to somebody has experienced something. Like nothing changes until it becomes personal.
Mm,
And so my takeaway is I want to make things more personal.
I love that. I love that. My takeaway is don't spill your personal business to your laundry lady
Yeah,
or
read the
any other
room. We gotta read the room.
you got to read the room. No, for real. My takeaway is just really understanding and remembering my relationship with divinity, and that's the most important thing, because that's what's going to take, as Srila Prabhupada was saying in the purport, that's the beginning of me moving out of ignorance. So if I start to think that other relationships, my relationship with the laundry lady, my relationship with the, I don't know, person on the subway, if I start to think that that interaction is more important and I let it ruin my day and define my day and define my month, well, that's the problem, because I'm falling deeper into ignorance the more that I put importance, give that more importance than my relationship with Krishna. So that's what I'm working
Preach. Hashtag preach. Yes, I like that one. Why? Yes. I have to be careful about which relationships I give importance to. That's a good one. I like it.
Boom, 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 boom. Awesome. Thank you everyone so much for your beautiful participation. Baldevi is saying, I'd say to really focus on Krishna and God and reveal that great friendship. Lean into that friendship so you can nurture other friendships with more love and tolerance. That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Baldevi. Martha is saying, love and compassion for everyone without judgment. Yes. Thank you all so much. Can the podcast be extended to an hour? Don't know, but nice idea. Thank you all so much for being here.
It's 5 days a week, guys.
That's 5 days a week. I don't know. Thank you so much for being here, the live studio audience, everyone listening out there. If you love this podcast, please tell a friend, tell them to join you, and we will see you soon. Thank you, Achyuta. Have a beautiful rest of your Tuesday. Bye, folks. See you tomorrow morning.